It's a rematch for the bantamweight title. Dan Tom here with MMA Junkie to help you break down the main event in Miami for UFC 299 between Sugar Sean O'Malley and Marlon Chito Vera. Of course, they first met a few years ago, but that fight kind of ended a bit anticlimactically. Of course, Vera landed a really nice calf kick at about the 255 marker of that first round, and we kind of saw Sean O'Malley's legs start to give out. From there, the fight ended on the ground with some beautiful ground and pound via the elbows, and that was O'Malley's first defeat. However, Sugar Sean was able to skyrocket to the top of the division since then, as he is now the champion, and kind of similar like we saw Michael Bisping do with Dan Henderson back in the day. Well, when you've got history with the champ, the contender queue can shuffle a bit, and we're going to see Vera versus O'Malley 2 this weekend. At the time of this video, the odds makers and the public are siding with the sitting champ in O'Malley in the neighborhood of minus 280 with a comeback on your underdog, the challenger Vera. Well, that's going to be in the neighborhood of plus 210. Now, I wouldn't like to see this fight necessarily get wider, but am I surprised or do I disagree with who is favored? No. Now, I will say that begrudgingly because I'm always one to bring up the old classic Robbie Lawler, Rory McDonald comes to mind, very popular fight. We see this with a lot of betting lines where the fighter who won the first fight won't necessarily be favored to win the second, and I find that particularly head-scratching when one or both fighters are still relatively within their fighting prime. And speaking of relative, the first fight didn't even happen that long ago, and we can kind of check those boxes here. So that alone, I don't blame anybody for taking a stab on Vera, particularly on those later rounds for the value. But even though I was wrong with my pick for the last fight, I did pick O'Malley by decision, and despite the durability issues that, you'll hear people like John Anik, great play-by-play commentator for the UFC, or you'll hear, schlubby analysts like myself talk about, when it's those long and lanky fighters, especially when you're cutting down to 145, 135, or 125, it's not such a coincidence, O'Malley has had a ton of injuries in victory or defeat, right? We've seen that. Even in his last fight with Sterling, that kind of could have happened with the rib injury he was carrying in. Now, it went his way beautifully, but, we've seen it go the other way, too. Just a couple main events ago, down to division, Brandon Royval, who also has a injury history. Love Royval, not trying to gaslight him here, but he suffered an injury, was able to still pull off the victory, of course. Fantastic fighter. But these are things we kind of got to, look into when we're trying to prognosticate these matches. And I am still going to go with O'Malley. I'm still going to pick him by decision. But to see pathways for Vera, to see more on both fighters' games, check out my in-depth breakdown over at MMAJunkie.com, where you can find results this weekend.